Good afternoon. We'll call this meeting of the Albuquerque Bernalillo County Government Commission to order. We do not have a quorum here yet, so we're going to go and start with some of the informational items. And then when we have a quorum, we will act on some of the action items. To begin, just to make it clear, I'm sitting in for Commissioner Quesada. He is going to be listening in or participating telephonically for the approvals on the agenda, but I'll be chairing the meeting this evening, and so we'll do that. And I suppose we could we will have a silent invocation now and the Pledge of Allegiance led by Council President Sanchez.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, President Sanchez. And we'll talk about some changes to the agenda, but the first, as was stated before, we'll move up to public comment. Did anyone sign for public comment? Okay. And then we have some discussion items, the first one, Ms. Yara, were you going to be on the multimodal?
No, the Tijeras Biozone.
Okay. Why don't we start with the Tijeras Biozone Arroyo, the Tijeras Arroyo Biozone Study, and this is a project sponsored by Councilor Harris. As people may know, the city and the county each have, I think, a very soon-to-be very robust public open space program. The county has a good one, and we've had one as well, but haven't had much funding until recently. And so as of this year, the city will have better funding for its open space priorities. And we always work together on things of this sort, that many of which are honestly outside of city limits, and some are even outside county limits, I think, in the past. But I could be wrong about that one. But Councilor Harris.
Sure, and I'll turn it over to Stephanie Yara in a minute, but I also wanted to say I think this kind of came out in the agenda a little bit differently than I wanted it to. But so maybe what we can do is maybe next meeting talk about what I really also wanted to talk about, which is kind of a more global, consideration of what are we doing as a city and the county in terms of coordinating our efforts with regard to open space, because I think the county has a grocery receipts tax that's the small increments as dedicated open space, and now the city is dedicating 2% of our biannual or semi-annual, I guess it is, bond package to open space. And I've heard, although I might be mistaken, that there's not a whole lot of coordination with regard to what we're doing and what our options are. And I also am handing out something. I don't know if Dr. Schmader is here or not. Yeah, he is. I had a little friendly disagreement with Dr. Schmader, and I still think I kind of disagree. But with what the whole thing about, we have so much open space assets that the city owns, which is actually in an unincorporated area, and then the county has its own open space, actually has a funding source, and I'm just wondering sort of wondering out loud if we're doing it right by having the city, and I'm going to have Dr. Schmader talk about all the assets that are in the county. Well, the city should be managing the open space in the county, and there's one thing which I also want to bring up, this map. If we look at this map, why don't you put, see the area, someone put sort of use their finger and go around the three areas that are in the Bernalillo County. Okay, so there's for instance, not there, no, see right in the middle of that, Stephanie?
Yeah, so the white line represents, sorry about my bad art skills, but the white line represents the city-county boundary.
I know, but right in the middle, no,
Yes.
yeah, that's county. Like move over, that's county, and go up in Four Hills, that little thing. There's a little, up a little bit, yeah, down, and then to the right, on my right, you're right,
Oh, right.
right there, that's county. Now, all of those are lands that, as far as I can tell, are never, ever going to generate any property tax or ever any grocery receipts tax. And why are those in the county? It's just, I don't understand it. I mean, we just, pardon me? So, I mean, maybe that's something we could do as a resolution from this board. Maybe they should be annexed into the city, especially because of what we're thinking about doing. Or maybe so we can get some response from the county as to why they should remain in the county, if the county thinks they should. I don't understand why. So this is just some of the coordination issues and some of the lack of sort of a global assessment of these open space projects and so forth. But I guess, Ms. Yar, you want to talk about the terrace biozone?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and commissioners and councilors. In 2014, the city commissioned a resource management plan for the Tijeras biozone, and it focused on a few things, mostly conservation relating to the natural resources, wildlife, and environmental features that are along the arroyo, as well as some cultural resources. There are some areas of archaeological interest along the arroyo, and of course providing opportunities for outdoor recreation and basically an open space area. The map that is in front of you was part of the resource management plan, and it prioritized the acquisition of the parcels along the arroyo. There are more than several some are owned by the city and other governmental agencies, and then so the ones that are marked as green or blue are owned by governmental agencies, including the city, and those that are in a various shade of red or pink are the parcels that are privately owned and are prioritized in the plan for acquisition. I think the goal of the plan was to acquire as many parcels as we could along the arroyo to basically create buffers around existing open space lands and to, again, protect the environment, as well as kind of trying to create a deterrence for unsavory activity and kind of trash dumping in the area. Currently, the Open Space Advisory Board of the city is evaluating these parcels in their prioritization matrix. And Mr. Green, the chairman of the Open Space Advisory Board, is present today as well. Of course, in the last city CIP plan, Councilor Harris was successful in adding a 2% set aside for open space acquisition. So we did get those bond monies just this month, and some of that is available for acquisition based on the recommendations of the board and actions of the council. As we spoke earlier, some of these parcels are outside of the city limits in the county areas, and so I think the goal is to maybe have some coordination with the county on a plan to acquire some of these parcels. We are reaching out to a consultant to kind of help us come up with the best methods of acquiring the properties from interested property owners, those who are willing to sell, and kind of just brainstorming on different ways we could protect the area, either through straight acquisition or, easements or what have you. So, I stand for any questions.
If we could, Councilor Harris, Commissioner Hart Stebbins can only be here shortly, so I'd like to get through our action items, and we'll come right back to this if it's all right.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks. So I'm going to move approval of the minutes of the December 19th, 2017 meeting. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Opposed?
Yes.
And that passes. And then we now will proceed with new business. So we have the selection of the chair, and this, based on our procedures, would be a city councilor. And is there a nomination, Councilor Sanchez?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to nominate Councilor Pena.
There's a motion and a second for Councilor Pena. And yes, was there a question here?
He
Okay.
seconded it as well.
Okay.
Quesada second.
Okay. And then, is there any other nomination for chair? Seeing none, I move Councilor Pena by acclamation.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Councilor Pena be elected by acclamation. All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes? Opposed?
Yes.
And that passes. So we will now move to the selection of the vice chair. Nominations for a county commissioner to serve. Mr. Chairman? Yes. Councilor Sanchez.
I'd like to nominate Commissioner O'Malley.
All right.
Second.
All right. There's a motion and a second. Anyone else of interest for the county commission slot of vice chair? Seeing none, I'll move the selection of election of Councilor Commissioner O'Malley by acclamation. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed?
Yes.
And that passes. And then we have our reasonable notice of public meetings resolution. County staff, I think does everybody know what this is? It's a regular state requirement that we have, and sort of a.
So moved.
There we go. Thank you, Commissioner O'Malley. I'm bad. I still call her counselor all the time. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed?
Yes.
And that passes. And then the meeting schedule for 2018, staff, this is, again, a regular established schedule, and we do some playing by ear with this, but I'll move approval.
Second.
There's a motion and a second for approval of the meeting schedule. All those in favor say yes. Opposed? And that passes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Can I just ask a question about that? What is the policy if a meeting needs to be changed? Does the chair have the authority to move a meeting? I know that has happened over the last year or so, that a meeting date gets changed, but I'm not sure how that happens.
I think Councilor Pena was probably most recently chair. It's been a while since I chaired, so how did that work?
I don't recall.
Yeah.
I don't think
the
changed.
staff typically tries to call up and see about everybody, and then sometimes there are last minute cancellations and so forth. Also, sometimes if it's just kind of there's no important action, we do like to check in every month, but if there's not an action item, sometimes I think that's the prerogative of the chair to just say, we're not meeting this month.
And
Great.
yes, that is, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Hart Stebbins. In the past, we select a day, usually for ABCGC, it's the fourth Thursday of each month. We had some changes in that last year to accommodate the chair. For this year, we've gone back to that, of course, with variation dependent on commissioner and councilor availability. We usually get that direction from the chair, and then we go out and we check what the best for venue as well, availability, and commissioner councilor availability.
Great, again, because this was the first time that I had ever been on a board where the meeting dates changed. And so I find that sort of difficult sometimes to accommodate. So again, Chair Benton, I just ask that if that is going to happen, that there be some consultation with the rest of the board members. Thank you.
And I think, Commissioner, just so you know, Commissioner Quesada is participating by phone, so he heard that. And did you hear that, Commissioner Quesada?
Yes, I heard that.
Okay, just to confirm. All right. So we have one other approval
Mr.
item
Chairman.
tonight on the agenda.
Councilor Pena would like.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Pena.
I just kind of want to add to that because when I was actually first elected in 2013, the ABCGC actually only met maybe once a year. So when I was elected and actually sat on this and became the chair, I just knew that there was an opportunity for us to really partner with the county and work and navigate through that, and this would be the perfect venue to do that. And so then started to try to meet at least once a year, and I mean once a month rather than once or twice a year. And I think just navigating through this, I think little by little this committee has actually commission has become more and more important and critical to both the city and county as we move forward.
Thank you. So we'll move to item 4E under new business, approval of the single site supportive housing proposal. Katrina or staff, please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. So what we have before you, it's been a long time since we've been before you, but what we have before you today is a proposal for the single site supportive housing. I think we've met with most of you and discussed this. When we had first started with Community Connections, and that is a scattered site housing project or that we've been working on for a while now, what we found is that we couldn't take some of the clients because we couldn't serve them. They needed more than scattered site housing and probably 2 to 3 days a week of case management. They need more intense services. We have since a few times gone out to see the Denver model between the city and the county, and they have single site housing models that actually take more clients who need more intense supervision and needs 24/7. So we put a proposal together. This is a joint effort between the city and the county that would allow us for property acquisition and capital, one-time funding, as well as case management services and vouchers. So we've broken these up into 2 separate proposals, or not 2 separate proposals, but 2 separate funding sources, because what we don't know is if a vendor actually already has a property or if they want to build a property. By the time you do that, we don't know exactly how much the housing vouchers are going to be or how much the case management service is going to be. So we're going to do this in 2 separate phases. So with that, and I do have the chair and the vice chair of our supportive housing subcommittee, as well as the chair of the steering committee, if you'd like to hear from them as well. They have been working on this proposal for 9 months.
Sure, let's hear from the subcommittee representative.
You go ahead.
I'm Robert Beatty, Chair of the Supportive Housing Committee. We have been working on this proposal for 9 months, but we put several other proposals through. We think this is a good proposal. We think it's very well needed, and we think it can serve a really important need. And we ask for your support on this.
Thank you so much, Robert Beatty. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Nancy Jo Archer, and I'm chair of the steering committee. We also really endorse this proposal. And I really want to talk a minute about the services, because that was done jointly by 2 committees. The Housing Committee worked on the housing perspective, and the services were worked by the Supportive Services Committee. And we developed a fairly rich program for services, feeling that we don't create change just by plunking people down in houses, that there needs to be some other aspects to their treatment, to what's available to them, to learning opportunities, et cetera. So I think it's an excellent proposal and certainly is widespread. If you have any questions, I'm here.
Any questions from the committee? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good evening, Commissioners and Councilors. I'm Sister Agnes Kasmerick. I'm the Vice Chair of the Housing Subcommittee. I urge your support for this proposal. It has a unique opportunity to help the most vulnerable in our community, the homeless, and those who are in housing situations where they cannot get services and increase their well-being. One of the unique part of this proposal that we were working with the community supports. They came up with what the needs are, and the housing subcommittee came up with the format, the housing. And another thing is that they're both key to helping individuals gain dignity, security, and that is also part of this project, that it's just not putting someone in a house, but having services on site. It will be a win-win situation for the individual and our community. I urge your support.
Thank you very much, Sister Agnes. Thanks for all your advocacy over the years, and all of you.
Thank you. Do you have any questions before we take the motion?
Commissioner Hart-Stebbins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you talk a little bit about the planning process? So there's going to be equal capital contribution from city and county, $2 million from each. What's the process for moving forward? Is it going to be a joint RFP for a developer, joint RFP for services? Who's going to take the lead on this?
That's a great question, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Stebbins. What we have in the proposal is that that Bernalillo County is not giving $2 million. We are proposing that if it's needed, we'll participate and give a one-time capital cost of up to what the city has contributed, which is $2 million. So there is an actual, there's a possibility that the county may not put dollars to this. Regardless of that, our relationship between the city and the county is such that when the city has the proposal and we go to the development, the county will be a partner in this effort. That is because the county is going to pony up the voucher dollars and the services, and it's not something that, if it's not something that we don't want to fund, then we need to be on the floor, on the ground building it at that same time. So we have a commitment between the city and the county to do that sort of thing. In terms of the details and who's going to be doing what, we assume, but there's a lot of things that we need to develop before this is all finalized. So this is the proposal that goes forward, and then we assume that we'll be partnering with the city. Maybe they want to do the land acquisition and the building, and then we do the vouchers and the services. But I think there's a lot of detail that we'll be working out in the interim. This important piece here is to get us moving. And so, I think things will be done through MOUs, IGAs, those sorts of things.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks. Other questions?
Real quickly, I
Councilor
think you've
Sanchez.
answered my question also regarding, because you're saying a motion to approve a maximum of $4 million and then a possible $1 million from the behavioral health money also. So potentially it could be up to $5 million. Is that correct? Based on what I'm reading here?
Mr. Chair and Councilor Sanchez, that is, but you'll only have one-time appropriation of $4 million. $2 million, that would be definitely used from the city first, and potentially, because we don't know who our providers or vendors are and what line item tax credits and other things that they could get, we just wanted to have the option of not slowing this process down and using one-time capital expenses on the county side as well from the behavioral health initiative.
So do you believe that the $4 million will be adequate as we move forward?
Mr. Chair, Councilor Sanchez, I believe that it is, and actually the committees have looked at it and think that actually it gives us a lot of wiggle room, that we may only need the $2 million, and if we do need more of the county's dollars, that it probably won't be a $2 million match. We just wanted to give some flexibility.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner O'Malley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In discussions about the project or the proposal, one of the difficult things is always to get capital, to get that startup capital for a project. And so, I felt and others felt strongly that this was an opportunity for the county, and it's a set aside. Said, okay, because there's an application that will have to go through that, and it's more than a $4 million project, that's for sure. But it's my understanding that so in order to get these things going, an application would have to go to the MFA, they'd look at getting more funds, et cetera. But so our money would be one of the layers of funding.
Yeah, yes.
And so, but this is, this is a city project. So, and then the other piece, which is the services, that has to go through a process too in terms of the MOU, et cetera. But the idea of having this kind of housing in conjunction with intense services, this is for folks who have really need a lot of intense services, case management, et cetera. The single site model seems to be very effective. So I think it's a good idea, and I'm very supportive of this proposal.
Thank you.
And yeah, just for those who are watching on TV or may not know, the city had committed this $2 million sometime back, and knowing that this was a priority of this effort, of our collective effort here. And so we appreciate the agreement and the commitment of the county, and it'll be great to move forward on these. As those of us who've done development know, it's a long road. And so this is a beginning. This puts us in a position to show our commitment as a community, because likely we will have matching funds from outside, and we desire that. But this really shows that we're ponying up ourselves locally. So thank you. Any other discussion, questions? Very much appreciate the motion for approval, and second from Councilor Sanchez, and
Mr. Chairman?
the presentation from.
Mr. Chairman, before we move on
Yes.
with the vote, we need 3 county commissioners present for this vote.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that rule. So, okay, so all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes, opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to give a brief update on the behavioral health initiative, or?
If it's okay with you, Ms. Yara, I know also was in the middle of a presentation, and we should finish that because she is on a time constraint, and then we'll go back to the regular agenda.
Thank you.
So we are back now on the informational discussion on the item 4F, the Tierras Arroyo. And Ms. Yara, anything else? Can you help us collect our thoughts?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, actually, that was the end of my brief presentation. I don't know if Councilor Harris has some questions.
Councilor Harris.
Just a couple questions, finance questions. How much is the 2%, I guess it's semi-annual, of the bond package? What's that projected to be?
Right, so the last cycle, the 2017 cycle, was 125 million total bond package, so the 2% came out to actually 2,500,000.
Okay,
so.
it's up to you.
And we do have some commitments on that money for some other option purchases, but there is a big chunk still available.
And going forward, I think we're expecting the bond capacity to go up as some of the bonds are paid off. So what's that sort of looking like in the next several years out?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members. The last estimates we got from our financial advisor was that it would hopefully go up to about 165 million, and hopefully the third cycle from now. But it looks like it will hover about at 125 for now.
So we're actually going to be over 3 million for open space, maybe three cycles from now.
Yes.
And what about the county? Tell me about it. Are you familiar with its levy for open space?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm not familiar with. I know that their monies are kind of commingled with their just parks and rec money, but I don't know if anybody is aware of that. I can research that more.
Does someone from the county know that? Because that's why
Councilor, I'd be
yep.
happy to answer that.
Sure.
That is our money is property tax. So there was an increment, very small increment, and of course, property tax doesn't generate as much as gross receipts tax. So it's about $2 million. It's running about $2 million a year. Yes, every year.
And was that imposed by the county, or was there a question that went?
It was a question, so it went
Okay.
before the voters. You had mentioned earlier about, us working together, and I hope that we can. It makes sense for us to work together. It's very costly to maintain properties. I think that's probably the biggest thing. Our money is supposed to also it could go to maintenance, and so, but most of it is going to acquisition. But we still have to maintain these properties, and for example, there's a property in Carlita Springs that we're just closing down for now in order, it's a lovely property, but it's kind of difficult to get to. We're closing it down for renovations because we haven't had the funds to renovate some of the buildings. So that's also a consideration when we're looking at properties. Our focus is really, as a county, as we focus on preservation of ag properties, historic cultural properties, and, if there's ways for us to partner with the city on those, that would be great.
Okay, one thing I might want in the future, maybe I'll bring some legislation for this body maybe in the next meeting, just to kind of form some sort of committee to talk about some coordination. And maybe, since nobody seems to know why these properties in the middle of my district, in the middle of, which are totally undevelopable, are even part of the county, maybe we could annex them if that makes sense. I'm not sure if it does. It would just seem to me that as we try to bring these into the city open space, that it might make sense to have them all under one governmental entity also, at least to the parts that they connect.
Councilor Harris, I would just add that historically, we have, even after we used to have a more robust dialogue about some of our, I guess you would call them the patchwork areas and the shoestring annexations area of the city and the county. But even with that, without that process, we still have periodically agreed between the city and the county to annex something. So, if this is something that's not revenue producing and so forth, and the county commission and the leadership is interested in such a thing, and then, this is something that could be worked out, and we would have to collectively agree upon it. So that's kind of the process on that, and I agree. Also, I think in terms of the funding, it's interesting because our funding is capital funding primarily and cannot be used for maintenance. Whereas because the county has a different sort of funding, maybe there is an opportunity here where we could work with each other, and we have a joint library system that works very well, I think, together. And so this is an example where maybe we could do something like that going forward, or at least talk about it going forward. So thanks for bringing this up. And we do, Commissioner Quesada is still on the phone, and he's also is time pressed, so we're going to juggle a little bit and go back now to to item G, discussing the APS board members on the ABCGC, and this is sponsored by Commissioner Quesada and Councilor Pena. So which of you would like to introduce this? Commissioner?
Yes, if I could have a moment. We felt that can you hear me?
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, Mr. Chair. I'm hoping you can hear me. I apologize that I have to be on the phone this evening. But I think we both felt that this was a very important matter to bring up, knowing that, the ABCGC does do a lot of discussion on behavioral health, which is, a lot of it is focused on our children and how we interact with Albuquerque Public Schools. Also, as we all know, that as the county and the city grows, that APS should be, sitting with us as we make plans, as we move forward. I think you can even just look at this agenda tonight and see how relative, how it should be relative that APS is in the room, because, we talk about open space, and, it's great to have open space, but how do we engage our children? How do we use it as an educational tool? And how do we get APS involved to support some of our open space initiatives? Even here on the agenda, we're going to be talking about Balloon Fiesta landing space. We all know that when I sat on the school board, that we had a lot of balloons that always land in the city. They would always look for the biggest spaces to land. And we know that most of that is, public schools. So I think as we grow as the ABCGC, I would really love to have Albuquerque Public Schools sitting with us when we make crucial decisions as we move forward.
Councilor Pena.
And Mr. Chairman, and I can add to that, we've talked to a few folks from APS, and when we're talking especially in particular about the behavioral health, as you all know, APS probably is the largest behavioral health provider in the city of Albuquerque in terms of the youth and the homeless children that they serve. So, for them to really have a place at the table, and as we talk, and as I mentioned earlier, about working and partnering together on how we move things forward, I think APS having a seat at the table would be very important.
Thank you. Other discussion? Commissioner O'Malley.
I think that's a great idea.
And I do too. I think this kind of effort, especially since we've been working on the behavioral health more than anything, is so tied to our youth and to the way kids are brought up and how they're educated. So I really agree. It's an interesting idea we ought to pursue, and how this might look. On the Water Authority, the main stakeholders is the city and the county also, and their ex officio members from Los Ranchos. On the COG, APS is getting some increased representation on the technical committees, but they do have a seat on the board at the COG. So important discussion. Councilor Harris.
Mr. Chairman, let me ask Commissioner Caseta if he knows if the APS board members would like to be able to serve with us.
Commissioner Quesada, did you hear that?
I think
No, not really.
I think I can answer that.
Okay, sure.
So we've had some discussion, and I don't know what it looks like. We just decided to bring it up and have the conversation and see if this commission had an appetite for it. But, whether it be an ex officio member, one member, I think it would be important. I don't know unless, they're, obviously they have some services that they provide for the behavioral health as well. We can put those resources together, and they could actually maybe serve as a board member. I don't know exactly what it looks like at the end of the day, but I just, again, wanted to see if there was the desire of the commission.
And so it sounds like there is from most of the folks. Councilor Harris.
Okay. I didn't think Councilor Pena completely exactly answered the question. So you've had conversations with the school board, and it sounds like the answer is yes, that they would like to participate, as far as you can tell. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, yes.
And so maybe the next would be for Mr. Caseta to actually talk to the board some more and then bring a resolution. Because we can, does both the city and the county have to have parallel legislation to change the membership of this board?
Yes, this board is created by a joint agreement. I mean, we would have to look at that and see what would be involved in that. I think if there's no opposition from this board today, that we could ask staff to look into that and report back on what it might look like. And then in the meantime, perhaps yourself and Commissioner Quesada could do that outreach and maybe have somebody come down and speak to us even next time around, if that's okay with everybody. But Councilor Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really like this concept. I think it's vital that the Albuquerque Public School Board members, or a couple of members, are involved with us on this initiative because of the behavioral health, but also because of public safety in the schools. I mean, we are dealing with major crises across the country with a lot of the shootings, but it would be nice to have the APS school board working with the city councilors, the county commissioners, in dealing with a lot of these issues. And if we can partner with them, I think it's going to be vital and critical to also the Albuquerque Public Schools, and especially our young children.
All right. Well, thank you. So we'll ask staff, city and county staff, to look into that, what that might look like, and make a suggestion, and then we'll take it from there. Thank you. And then now Commissioner Quesada, if he's still here, Commissioner Quesada and I will talk quickly about F, and we have a brief slideshow on that. Commissioner Quesada and I co-sponsored this near South Valley multimodal study, so emphasis on the near. This is kind of the South Valley north of Rio Bravo and east of the river. Given that we have a border there between the city limits and the unincorporated part of the county, this area does contain industrial, big industrial uses. It's zoned industrial to a great extent, especially in the county side, but also we have the I-25 project. I-25 is being redesigned by the State Department of Transportation. That's an ongoing effort. Also, as most of you know, the Sunport Extension is an important project by the county. And this is just showing some of the traffic counts existing and projected after the construction of Sunport Boulevard. So Sunport goes, would connect from where the interchange is up at I-25 that takes you to the Sunport itself. You could, in the future, go west down to Broadway where Sunport Boulevard would have an intersection with Broadway and Woodward, which is an existing city street. So this is another city and county interface that's really important to everybody, very important to the community of San Jose, which has been concerned about truck traffic and industrially generated traffic. What the study showed is that the industrially generated traffic in San Jose proper and South Broadway in particular will be reduced by this project. So South Broadway should become a much more pleasant street in terms of truck traffic. At the same time, there will be some more truck traffic on Woodward. So this is something we're working on together. And this study also makes some really good recommendations as far as bicycle connections from the South Valley to the center city, which surprising number of people are very interested in having better connections, and Sunport Boulevard would be part of that. So we got some really good ideas out of the project. I'm hoping that both the city and the county will be able to work together and find some capital funds for some of these projects, many of which are fairly simple and won't really cost that much to improve multimodal connections for everyone. Also, to provide that relief valve for the industrial traffic to the county and city industrial areas. So that's what the study is about. Again, this is just an example of the bicycle connection that could occur up at Sunport Interchange. There's an option for cyclists to, if we get this worked out, to be able to continue and get over to Yale and then down to the university very easily and safely. So these are just some images from the study. Anything to add, Commissioner? Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. You know, I think it was a great study. Sorry, Mr. Chair. I believe that it was a great study. It showed a lot of great information as we in the county grow in that area of the South Valley, our industrial area. We really have a game plan of moving in a different direction of what kind of industry goes in these neighborhoods. As you all know, historically, the type of industry is pretty inundated in that area, and so we think that this also gives us an opportunity to move in a different direction and bring different types of industry and different types of jobs to the community. So I think it's very important that the study was done, and like I said, if you look over the information, you'll see how it distinctly is going to affect not only the parts of the city, but also, District 2 in the South Valley. So I thought it was a great thing, and so we're really excited about moving forward with how we move forward in that district.
And thank you, Commissioner, for working together on this. And also just to point out that this was presented to the Metropolitan Transportation Board, and there's a larger PowerPoint presentation available from the Council of Governments, which helped us with this project. The county and the city each pitched in, but it was managed by the Council of Governments, so we thank them as well. All right, thanks. We'll move on now to item I.
Well, hang on a second.
Oh, are we still in the biozone?
We're still in the biozone, but I'm going to ask, we have Dr. Schmader here, as well as the chair of the Albuquerque Open Space Advisory Board, but Councilor Sanchez wants to go to H because he's got to get back. He just wants
To which?
to the balloon landing zone.
Okay, so H is the Tijeras Arroyo.
No, G is the Tijeras Arroyo, and H is the Balloon Fiesta landing space.
Mr.
I guess
Chairman, what
on our
you're,
iPads, it's different from the printed.
what you're looking at is probably the script, and so when we added the behavioral health item, it renumbered. So
Okay.
H is the Tijeras, I'm sorry. G is the discussed Tijeras Arroyo biological zone. H is the Balloon Fiesta landing.
Okay, so whatever she just said.
Okay, well, all right, we're, I know that Ms. Yara has to leave, so if we're okay, Councilor Harris, on any questions and answers, I think we're, with regard to the biozone. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Yara. And then, so, any other comments on the biozone and that work?
Well, I'm going to ask to come back to it, because there's some other things I want to chat with Dr. Schmader a little bit, and perhaps even Mr. Green. Since Councilor Sanchez wants to hear about this. I think
Okay,
Jim
so we'll
Garcia-
move to the discussion of the Balloon Fiesta landing space.
Okay, and then as Tom Minicucci comes up, what I was sort of anticipating was that there'd be legislation for this body to actually act on, but we're just discussing the city's resolution, which was passed, but I think it'd be helpful to have a resolution before this body as well as the county commission. But let's talk, I guess, about the city's resolution first, which is the only thing that's on the agenda for tonight. So go ahead, Mr. Minicucci, if you would, please.
Commissioners and councilors, members of the board, basically the city introduced R1819. What it does is it establishes a task force to study balloon landing zones. Of course, what you'll do is, I believe there should be a copy of it available, and it goes to the whereases, which just points out the significant economic impact that the Balloon Fiesta has on the community. Everything from both the impact of the people who come to visit and what investments it's spurred regarding hotels and restaurants. However, it did point out that the area it is located in, of course, is probably one of the areas that through the city's recession has continued to grow and infill, and that would be the North I-25 corridor. So what that has done is over the years, making it more difficult for pilots to land. And in a moment here, I'm just going to turn the podium over to two members from the board who will explain a little bit more in depth. But from that, and with that, it goes ahead and establishes a commission. Realizing the importance to the commission calls for a fairly significant group, starting from the mayor of Albuquerque, city councilors, county commissioners, members of the state legislative delegation that serves in the areas that are covered by the Balloon Fiesta, the directors of the various Albuquerque departments that have influence on it regarding planning and parks, and then representatives from the various private interests such as Albuquerque Chamber of Commerce and the Balloon Board and pilots. What it does do is it goes ahead and says it realizes that we've bought land before, and that buying land is an option to look at, but it might be too expensive, may not be practical because the land's already been built on. So it's going to look at economic incentives, land use incentives, tax incentives, or just kind of review, was there any other mechanisms out there? Everything from like maybe portable lights that can be moved in and out during Balloon Fiesta of an existing parking lot, or lights that can be moved and replaced. Anything creative to try to address this issue. Again, I would just emphasize to you that if you go to the area from the Amafka Ditch through Balloon Fiesta Park down to Paseo, out to Louisiana right now and drive around, you'll see 9 to 11 construction projects going on. They're significant multi-acre projects. So the area is continuing to infill as we speak. So I think with that said, I would like to, with your permission, turn it over to Mr. Jim Garcia of the Balloon Fiesta Board and also Chuck Clark. And they'll explain a little bit more about this, about the flyer.
And Mr. Garcia, if you want to just kind of take it from here and bring the other gentleman up with you and kind of go back and forth as you see fit.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Harris, Chairman. Thank you. This is a privilege to be here today. Thank you. This is Chuck Clark. Both of us are on the board of directors of Balloon Fiesta, and I believe most of what we are here for is for information and for some resources, but I will tell you that our #1 priority at Balloon Fiesta is public safety, period. We have, as you were talking about schools earlier, Mr. Sanchez, we too have those same issues that we're dealing with on how do we keep our public safe. But our pilots are the party. And we're having a real problem in our growth. We would love to grow, but we have actually stymied a lot of our growth as far as balloons. At one point, we had 1,000 balloons. We are now capped at 550 balloons, and I'm proud to tell you that we have now sold out all of our spots for this year. Our sponsors, it's the most incredible year coming into 2018 as far as that goes. But when we were briefed on this last night at our board meeting, we went to some of the other board members and we were asking comments about give us the specific problems that they're having. And one of the board members had mentioned that look at the landscape of where we were 10 years ago to where we are now. In that just 2-mile diameter around Balloon Fiesta Park, we have lost probably 40% of the landing areas that we need. And a lot of ballooning is going up and then coming down right away because you decide that it's time to either bail or we're going to take another passenger. So we're losing those areas around there. We don't really have solutions. We like the ideas that Tom was bringing up, that if we look at how we do infrastructure, there was, in 2007, the city had bought a piece of land on Vista del Norte and built a park there. It was going to be a Walmart. Chuck, do you want to tell them what percentage of balloons land there right now?
72% of our
So,
flights from the Balloon Fiesta Field.
72% of our flights are landing in that little piece of land on Osuna. So thank you all for thinking of that piece of land, 2007. But the patterns, our wind patterns usually flow down from the south after the monsoon, which is when our balloon fiesta is. So all that pattern goes out. The reason that you see so many balloons up in the air on the west side every single day is because it's easy to take off and it's easy to land. We have nowhere to land north. We have the Sandia Pueblo. They have been enormous partners. They are wonderful to us, but they're very strategic. They have a lot of livestock, so there's a lot of reasons why we cannot land there. We can hardly land to the east because the city infill is very strong to the east of Balloon Fiesta Field, and we go straight into the mountain. So east and north are very, very tough. South and southwest is kind of the pattern, the wind patterns that most of the balloons take. After that, your only source to land is to stay in the air all the way until the airport. And that's a PZ also, which is a private zone. Chuck, you want to add anything to that?
Well said. The territory east of the field really represents what a wind flow just does not give us during Fiesta. Rarely are we pushed to the east from the field. Most times we are, 70% we're pushed to the south, and the other 20% or so we are going to Rio Rancho or the river. So the east of the field really is kind of a no man's land because we don't really expect to see any balloons anywhere past, let's say, the freeway anyway. So that's not the big issue. What we're doing is going south. What we're concerned about is the infrastructure going up, down south. I don't know if you can categorize incentives that developers in the south region get a better deal than the developers in the east regions. That's up to your job right there. But it's clear, as Jim said, a need that's very, very much needed because of public safety, and quite frankly, it's going away year by year by year. We were at 1,000, we're now at 550 capped. I've been on the board for 17 years. I predict seeing a lesser amount of balloons down the road only because of public safety, because we don't have any landing spots.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Is it Mr. Croft, is it?
Clark.
What?
Clark.
Clark, Mr. Clark, thank you. So tell me, is there issues, like there's some public spaces or private nonprofits like Sandia Prep, can we land there, for instance? Is that open?
Some of them. For instance, if you look at, I don't know if you have the map that Tom issued, but Sandia Prep, very close to Vista del Norte, that's a no land zone. That's a PZ, prohibited. And it goes up and down the area where there are manufacturers, there's private schools, there are entities that just don't want balloons in their property. Quite frankly, their gates are locked normally during the weekend.
So one reason why I'd like to have some state legislators on this task force, for instance, is that it occurs to me that not only could there be incentives but there could be some requirements. For instance, if you're a nonprofit and the state of New Mexico says you don't have to pay taxes, the state of New Mexico, you don't have to pay property taxes, the state of New Mexico says you don't have to pay gross receipts taxes. And by the way, this is the most important economic event in the state, and Sandia Prep depends on the city of Albuquerque doing well, and it's going to say no to us. You know, I think we could actually, in the property tax law, say, by the way, if you're going to be in an area where it would be convenient for balloons to land, you're going to let them land, or else you're not going to get a tax break. Or we have a, or we have a little bit more of a softer conversation. But, and we could do other things where we could fund like a rapid response team that would go out and fix their sprinklers and fix their turf.
That's a great idea.
And do something like that, so we have sort of a carrot and a stick. And maybe we don't have to actually pass that legislation. Maybe we could pass something that doesn't quite make it directory, but close or something like that. I don't know if there are any golf courses where we can't land that the city owns, or?
They're all very generous with their
Okay.
space.
Everybody it does a wonderful job, but you have so many people in town also, so we have traffic issues, we have we courtesy with the police officers. There's a lot of issues that happen during Balloon Fiesta. $101 million in direct economic impact. There's a lot of people, a lot of money coming into town. We have maps here. Every year, everybody gets to decide who gets to land, where they get to land, and then what's a red zone, a blue zone, a pink zone. So all the pilots know where they can and where they can't land. And a lot of them will not even fly. Last year, the second day we had east flow. The second day of Balloon Fiesta, we canceled all the flights. So they stopped them before they even went up. So we lost the whole day just because the wind was going to the east.
Okay, so it sounds like the board thinks this is a good idea. Let us know if there's any tweaking we can do. What I'd like to do, commissioners, and I'm calling everyone a commissioner up here because we're part of the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Commission, but what I'd like to do next meeting is maybe have legislation for us to adopt as a commission, as a Bernalillo, and encourage the county, I guess there's only Commissioner O'Malley right now, to like go back and chat with the county commission and see if they maybe can do a similar legislation and then get going. I talked to the mayor, he's supportive of this. I offered perhaps too soon, but I said the city could actually staff the task force, and he appreciated that offer. So I don't know if you guys, you know, are willing to help us, you know, whatever we could do. I think we need to get going on this. And I brought something like this up about 5 years ago, and no one really pushed it, and nothing really happened. So I think we really need to get behind this and make it happen for the future of the city.
All right, Councilor Sanchez and then Councilor Pena.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Balloon Fiesta is the premier event here in New Mexico, and John, you said $101 million. I'm looking at $173 million
That's
of
indirect.
economic development for the city of Albuquerque. And I think this is so critical because the numbers have dwindled over the years. Chuck, you said you've served for 17 years and you've seen the numbers reduced, and you're looking at public safety and safety for the balloonists. But again, I think the biggest challenge that we face is Sandia Pueblo and the tribes. I know you made a comment, Jim, that they are cooperative, but it seems like year after year, it's always a challenge that we can get the balloons to land at the Pueblo. Have we met with the governor and the board to try to open up negotiations and work closer with them to make sure we can continue to, you know, increase this event instead of decreasing it year after year? Because they are also benefiting from the Balloon Fiesta. I mean, they have the casino, and it's an economic impact that's really benefiting them. But I just think this is the best event that takes place annually in New Mexico, and I think we've all got to be working on the same page and hopefully getting more cooperation from the tribes to assure that we can use those landing spots here. I know you mentioned there was cattle that was, you know, grazing on the lands, but I see a lot of open space as you look north towards the Pueblo, and, you know, hopefully we can work closer, you know, with them. I'd be more than glad to sit down and meet with the governor and the tribal council.
Commissioner Sanchez, thank you very much. That's a great suggestion. We meet with them annually. They will not do an extended contract with us. The problem is during the harvest time for their alfalfa is also part of it. They don't want balloons landing in their alfalfa fields. They're full of water, and it ruins that. So they have a lot of really strong concerns. Livestock is one of their big concerns. Truthfully, they've been very good. They've been very helpful, but they lock up and they close off their gates, and they'll only allow tribal police to get them out. So it's tough. But most of the problem is going to be to the south because that's where the balloons are flying. So.
And I also want to personally thank Councilor O'Malley for her vision when we purchased
We
the,
do too. Thank
property.
you.
It's made a big difference. Like you said, 73% of the balloons are landing at that site.
Yeah.
And
That is huge.
Counselor,
Okay.
that resolution was a co-sponsor with Counselor Benton and me and Counselor Malley.
I think the three male county commissioners here did vote for it, but I have to give all credit to Commissioner O'Malley. Let's hear from Councilor Pena and then Commissioner O'Malley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think with all the discussion, most of my questions were answered. But on this map, I can't really read the legend. It's just the print is too small. But do you have, or does this indicate data of where all the balloons are, primarily are landing? You know, I just say that because this way, I appreciate Councilor Harris's desire to do this. I think it's important. All I can say is that I do agree with you. They all go to the south. So I happen to live kind of due southwest from the balloon fiesta, and we're just blessed as all heck because almost every day of the balloon fiesta, we have 3 or 4 balloons go directly over the house. So I know a lot of them are landing there at the Alamosa Elementary School and the park. And then I know they're like a little due south, we have an area, it's kind of a bluff area where I know a lot of the balloons are landing. So, you know, if there's anything I can do to help support that, but I really think that, you know, if we can focus on certain areas and then maybe do some assist on those areas. So do you track the data?
No, it's impossible because, Chuck, how do you decide to land?
It's up to Mother Nature.
Yeah.
Right, no, but I just mean that, you know, every year when you have the balloon fiesta, if you had some kind of indicator from the pilots of where they're landing.
What we have to work with is the larger map. Unfortunately, the fonts are so small I can't read them. And they have a various PZ, prohibited zones, listed on that map. Pilots are not allowed to land there unless there's an extreme emergency. Then we have yellow zones. Pilots are allowed to land there. They prefer not to be landed there. And then they're wide open. But we don't have, well, the smaller maps don't show us further south. Smaller maps take off, into the Paseo del Norte corridor, I believe. So we're going further south, and that's exactly where I think we're getting excited about where Commissioner O'Malley now helped us with that endeavor, but it's depleting every year.
So, Mr. Chairman, just so if I can add to that, the reason I'm saying that is because we have a particular parcel of land. It's a very large parcel of land that I'm working with Commissioner Quesada, and we're trying to dedicate it as recreation open space area, and it's right there off of Central. It's kind of due south. It's a very large parcel of land. I think that if we can kind of focus on those areas of the city, you know, that I think would be a prime example of, as we're talking about open space and dedicating these areas and how to have an additional space for the balloonists to land, because like I said, I know a lot of them do go due south.
Yeah, most of us will do anything to avoid getting close to Central, only because that means we're getting very close to the airport. That means we're in C zone, which means we've got to maintain certain altitudes, and ideally, or legally, we need transponders on our balloons, which typically we don't have. So if we're getting close to Central, we start getting real nervous, and we'll probably try to land well before you approach Central. That being the case, if that occurs, then typically what balloonists will do is go high and go over the airport and come back down.
The area I'm talking about is not near the airport. It's it's the South Valley, Southwest Mesa.
South, okay.
And Counselor, thank you. One of the other things is all the pilots get a legend, and the legend has every zone, what it is. It's a golf course, it's a school, it's a FAA restricted area, and the FAA is in charge of all of the airspace. So they dictate where they can fly, where they can land. So they dictate it all.
But the PZ zones are brought about by private citizens or industry complaining to Fiesta and saying that we do not want balloons in our property, and it's considered a PZ zone. We try to accommodate them.
Commissioner O'Malley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm really pleased that Councilor Harris brought this up again. because I know that we are aware of the situation, and we have the awareness of it, but we, every now and then, you know, it said 5 years ago, I guess, there was a initiative to try and get folks together. I think maybe even something came out of that. Was that a study or something like that? I think there was some work that was done. But I think it's key what, you know, Councilor Pena mentioned is like, we need to, if we're gonna really like hone in on this, we do have to have an understanding of the flight patterns. And what happens, of course, is that, you know, sometimes there's emergency landings, so, or, you know, the winds change and all of a sudden, you know, folks are going south or whatever. That would be helpful. But the idea of really looking at what are some of the potential incentives, so that sort of thing, because buying land, of course, is very costly. You know, this whole event is huge. We're so proud of it, people who live in Albuquerque. And this is, I'm sure you get a lot of participation. I mean, we look forward to, that's a big event, and we really look forward to it. I think my husband's there every day. I think Councilor Harris may be there every day too, almost every day. So we really enjoy it. It's really wonderful. We're very proud of it. So I think this is timely, but I hope that we just don't kind of let this go. We've got to really think about what it is we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Councilor Harris, if you could wrap up, we've got a couple more items we need to finish. And
Okay, yeah, I'll
otherwise,
wrap
I'm
up
going to
and-
have to hand over the gavel to
I think
somebody else. Chair.
I'm done, but what these gentlemen can think about is in terms of having state legislators, I mean, would that help with perhaps the Pueblo? Because there might be something we can do there. But I'm done, I think.
Mr. Padilla.
I was wondering at the next meeting if you could actually bring some of those pilot maps so we can get an idea of like the zones, whatever you give to the pilots?
I'll give them to you now.
Okay.
So they're in this now. Thank you. I would also like to let you know that we're planning something really, really fun for the 50th. So stay tuned. There's going to be some really neat things. We had a great announcement today. Sam Parks, probably one of the most highly decorated balloonists in America, is now going to be our director of operations. So you'll be hearing that on the news tonight.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for the all the information, and we'll see you next at our next meeting.
We appreciate your support. Thank you all very much.
And Councilor Benton, Mr. Chairman, now I hear Dr. Schmader has to leave at 6:30. So
okay, so we have to leave at the same time. So Dr. Schmader, and I see our Parks Director is here also. If he would like to come up together. And just for those who do not understand that we do, Dr. Schmader is formerly our open space administrator and or superintendent, and we also will hear from the Parks Director.
And I'll start. I was bantering, I guess, with Dr. Schmader at a meeting, and then he wrote this. Do we have that memo that let's see, Bonnie, do we have that? I think that Dr. Schmader wrote. We're going to pass out. And he can also explain it just as well, just talking. But one of the things I was concerned about, sort of looking at this globally, is, you know, what, and maybe you can answer this, Doctor, is that tell me what open space properties does the city manage in the unincorporated areas of the county now? Because I think we have, but just go through them. There's some in the East Mountains. There's some potential acquisition rather of the sand dunes, I guess. But right now, what are the open space facilities that we have that are not in the city?
Mr. Chair and Councilor Harris, and thank you for giving me a little bit of time to talk about this. The city's open space program is 29,200 acres. And over 1/3 of it is outside of the corporate limits. So there are parcels in the East Mountains, at Gutierrez Canyon, San Antonito, up into even Sandoval County in Placitas and Golden, south on Highway 333, Old 14 at Juan Tomas. In the South Valley, there's the Hubble Oxbow farmlands. And a good portion of the Rio Grande Valley State Park, otherwise known as the Bosque, is not within the city limits, but the city of Albuquerque manages it. Same is true for portions of Petroglyph Monument. So The thing about it is, in the 70s, when the comprehensive plan was first put together, the framers did not see a boundary between where the city of Albuquerque would acquire open space lands as a common asset for the citizens of the county and the city. And so as a practice, even before that, in the 1960s, the city of Albuquerque was acquiring large tracts of natural land, and all the way through the 60s, up until the late 70s when the comp plan was put together. So as a result, if we had to stick to just the city limits for buying land, at the time, we probably would not have bought 80 or 90% of what we now own, because it was outside the city limits. So this was done in a broader, more global perspective. It's the spirit of this commission. So one of the things that I wanted to try to do, there are a few things that I've heard repeated come down from other meetings that come to the Open Space Advisory Board and get repeated again. And it's one of those, if they get repeated often enough, then they become true. So somebody sometimes has to sort of stand up and say, well, hey, wait a minute, what's the logic behind this? I would like to encourage that we do not look at the city, the corporate limits as a hard and fast line for acquisition. The map that Stephanie showed, for example, there are several parcels that are right next to the city limits but outside, that are high resource value, that I think would be very important for the city to acquire and add to its particular system. The boundary of the city and county is an artificial boundary. It's very ragged. It's a historic artifact. And so if we really adhere to it strictly, we would be tying ourselves and tying the ability to move forward on a number of acquisitions. The second point that I wanted to make sure that I get to is, I think there's a notion that if we have land outside the city limits, like the big tracts of land in the East Mountains that we manage, several thousand acres, sometimes I hear it said, well, why should the city even bother managing it? Why don't we just turn it over and we could give it to the county to manage or whatever? Then the county has a management problem. Mm-hmm. The city of Albuquerque's open space program has 40 employees that are specialists in open space management. The county has a system that is about 1,700 acres, so it's 1/15 the size, I guess, of what the city has, and it's got a small handful of very dedicated, very talented employees. But the focus on what the city and county does is somewhat different. As Councilor O'Malley or Commissioner O'Malley was pointing out, facility development is very important. Programming is very important, but we also have maintenance people. We've got a crew that just does maintenance on the Bosque, for example, to keep it in health and safe. So it would be a non-starter in my mind to start taking parts of what is one of the best open space programs in the country for its assets, the quantity, the diversity, and then start parting it out and just turning it over for no real benefit. We would be trying to say we've got the best system in the country on the one hand and then piecing it out on the other. It doesn't make sense to me. And lastly, I do hear it said, and again, Commissioner O'Malley talked about it, that the two programs don't coordinate and talk to each other, and this is really not true. We, in all of my experience, the open space staffs between the city and the county talk to each other very regularly. We coordinate all kinds of activity, programs, maintenance. The city has donated maintenance efforts to the county. There's county open space within the city limits, for example. So it's one of the most seamless and effective similar programs. So I want to dispel the notion that we don't work together. We really do. The difference is that we have different acquisition processes and priorities. The county is going through a green printing, and as Commissioner O'Malley said, they're focused on ag land in the South Valley. So they may not necessarily want to spend money up in Tijeras Canyon. The city might want to spend money in Tijeras Canyon, but may not be interested in buying agricultural land in the South Valley. In the end, it's all common asset for everybody, and we do work together very well. So I don't see it as being cross-purpose. I see it as being strength in numbers and building off of what each other focuses on better than not. So I hope that answers some questions.
I think it does, and it kind of, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was,
Go ahead. Sorry.
oh, I was just going to respond. I didn't mean that you don't have coordinated efforts, that you don't talk to one another. What I meant was, in terms of acquisition, it's been my, experience that there's not a lot of coordination going on. Maybe there is behind the scenes, but it looks to me like when we look at acquiring property, it's very much, seems to be within the county, and that discussion sort of is within the county. But I'm glad you brought up the whole fact of, the different types of funding we have. I mean, we have, Ken Martinez is here. We have the potential, because we have a property tax, to bond it and use that possibly to basically pay for interest. But the city doesn't have, does the city have the same kind of opportunity?
Yeah, we passed a resolution, actually sponsored it, that says that 2% of the GEO bond money will go to open space.
But can it go for debt service?
I think it can.
Can bond money go for debt service?
Well, when you purchase open space, it has to be a purchase, but I think.
No, but I mean, if you're just looking at the cash, available cash, or whether you can use that money to pay for to bond against that and use that for interest year after year. I was wondering if that was possible. You can't do that with.
I don't believe so. But Tom,
Maybe.
Yeah.
Tom Minicucci.
Commissioners, yes, what it is that I don't know if we can bond against it, but what we can do is that we can purchase a down payment and then get an option with the promise that when the GEO bond, and the saying that when the GEO bond bill gets passed, or the next bond cycle is passed, we will have money in that bond cycle to pay out the option. So
Okay.
it's not quite somewhat
It's
similar.
not the same. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And we do have our new Parks Director, Dave Simon, who knows a thing or two about the Rio Grande State Park and all sorts of things in his former work as State Parks Director. So, Director Simon, any comments?
Amen.
Thank you.
No, Counselor and Commissioners, first of all, thank you very much for welcoming me here to my new role in public service. It's an amazing honor, of course, to be serving the citizens of Albuquerque and Bernalillo County. So I very much am inspired by that work, which is why I'm glad to be back doing some of it, and very much look forward to working with all of you, to achieve these goals. I think nothing really in life that's substantial is ever achieved alone, and partnerships it's a watchword for how I go about my business and my life. So when it comes to coordination with the county, it's very, very high on my list. I spent 4 hours with the county open space staff yesterday. So but I do very much respect Dr. Schmader's perspective on the program. Of course, we all learned a lot from Dr. Schmader's investments of his professional career in our program, and I think it's hard to argue with the results. We have an outstanding, as you said, nationally leading open space program. My goal is to protect the gains we've made and make it even better. So I think we have outstanding opportunities to do that.
And I think we're coming up to 6:30, or the meeting is going to effectively end.
We actually have a pretty important
So we gotta
informational
go. All right, so
item here.
Why don't we, and I do want to recognize, I believe that we have the chairman of the Open Space Advisory Board, Chris Green. I just want to say hello, Mr. Green, thanks for coming. We probably don't have time to bring him up, but I'm going to be coming back probably with some legislation that says let's have some little task force and let's talk about these things, kind of not just backdoor, because we have a $3 million, $2 million, I guess it is every year, property tax from the county. We have about that amount of money, a little bit more every other year from the city, and we have one of the best facilities in a program in the country. Rather, let's keep that going. But anyway, I'll
And Counselor, I have some ideas on that subject and look forward to working with you and exploring those.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
Well, okay, people are leaving. Okay, so it looks like the next item for business is the Behavioral Health Initiative update, and we have, of course, Katrina Holcomb with our staff and the director of the program.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be very brief, I promise. I just wanted to provide an update on the status of the projects to date. As you know, we are 80% to 85% full in both of our community connections programs, which means, we only have a few more slots to fill with the jail reentry and those living in the community suffering from mental illness. So again, we have a total of 155 slots, and we're between 80 and 85% full. In terms of ACEs, I think it's really important to know that this is one of the first projects that you all vetted, and to date, they have served 2,200 families and children. So this is really good news for us. We're starting to measure the programs now. Paul Guerin with UNM ISR is putting together the evaluation committee on how we go out and do evaluations. In terms of the behavioral health advisor, I wish actually Councilor Sanchez was here, because we wanted to give a little bit of an update on the crisis system and the crisis continuum that we're working on. We did have been working with the state on critical pieces, as well as UNM Hospital, and perhaps in the next few months we'll be able to lay out that crisis plan for you, all the way from urgent cares and outpatient services to the inpatient services, perhaps partnering with hospitals in our community. I think community engagement teams are something that I wanted to talk about. We appreciate the city's partnership with community engagement teams, which went live last week. And community engagement teams are pre and post crisis, and we're looking forward to continued discussions with the city on moving the potential coast teams that are functioning right now under APD to function more like a community engagement team. And the last item that I just wanted to briefly mention is that we do have mobile crisis teams up and running. I think they've been up and running for about 3 weeks now, and to date they've taken 85 calls, and they look like the projected time is about 13,000 calls in the year, but 85 within a few weeks period of time, being able to divert from the hospital. I think we've had a total of 10 diversions, as well as allowing officers to go back out in the field because we're dealing with the behavioral crisis that is on the scene. So this city-county partnership is working very well. So that is the update, Madam Chair.
Does anyone have any questions for Katrina? Ms. Holcomb? Thank you very much. You
Thank
do a
you.
great job for us. I appreciate your staff who's here today, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's kind of it. There's no other business. Their next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, 26th, April 26th, in these chambers, 5 o'clock. Are there any other comments? If there are no other comments, thank you all for being here today.
Commissioner O'Malley,
evening.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, before you adjourn, there was one item left on the agenda. It was for an opportunity for the subcommittee chairs to speak.
Oh, okay, well, I want to give
If
them
they
the
want, to, it's just that
Okay.
it's on the agenda, and so we need to
Okay.
make sure for the record we allow for that.
All right, well, I'm happy to hear from the subcommittee chairs if they would like to speak.
Are they going to be at the next meeting?
This is an ongoing agenda item that is consistent for every
I move that we
agenda.
defer that item until next meeting.
Oh, are you okay with that? I appreciate you sticking around and.
That's
Okay,
okay.
you probably want to go home and eat. I don't blame you. All right, so we'll just do that. We'll just move it on to the next meeting. Thank you all
Yep.
very much. This meeting is adjourned.
And thank you.